Hey guys, welcome to the first video where I use my skull sauna. It's about time I take this YouTube thing a bit more seriously, and what better way than to give myself a bit of a personality. Today we're going to talk about the AAA game industry, and it's a bloody mess. Mess after mess, $400 million mess. But you wanna know the truth? I've actually come to a conclusion recently. The AAA game industry has no problems, if you ignore 90% of it. Isn't it interesting that all these games exist in the same ecosystem, and then all the bad games have big budgets, and all the good games have relatively lower budgets, and yet instead of the bad games being the good games are the good games. This was surprising to me, so I decided to do a bit of a research. If the problem isn't the AAA game industry, then it must be something else, so I started looking into it. And my research led me to some strange discoveries. I discovered that all the bad games have one thing in common. And I'm gonna tell you all about it right after I tell you about my own game that is currently on sale on all 4 platforms at the same time. Do you have any idea how hard it is to align a sale on all 4 platforms simultaneously? Links in the description. Anyways, to conduct my research, I decided to look at the Game Awards. You know, the Jeff Keighley special. The reason I'm going with the Game Awards is because only good games win the Game of the Year on the Game Awards. And even when sometimes the game that wins is not our personal favorite, you can't say that the game that won was a bad game. So I listed all the games from 2014 to 2024, and I noticed that only 4 of them were made by studios located in the United States. Since the problems we have in the AAA game industry are mostly stemming from the recent decade, I decided to exclude all the games that were made before 2020. And that leaves us with 1 game made in the United States. This was odd. Doesn't the United States of America have the biggest game industry? But maybe it was just coincidence, so I decided to include every game nominated for Game of the Years and not just the winners. Because if you get nominated, that means you're a good game. And the results were not too different. Out of a pool of 62 games, 20 of them were made in USA. That is 32%. Japan got 42. If we exclude games released before 2020, United States is down to 26%, while Japan is staying around 40. So in conclusion, the AAA game industry does not have a AAA game industry problem, it has an America problem. But in the past, we did not have these problems in the AAA games that were made in the United States. The good classic games were all made in America, so what happened? Well, corporations happened. In the past, the publisher corporations didn't own the game studios, the studios owned themselves, and then they got into a deal with the publishers. The publishers did the publishing and the developers did the developing. I'm going to compare another list of games now. These are not from the Game Awards, these are the recent hits and flops that I personally remember. On the list of flops, every single one of them are owned by a corporation. On the list of hits, only 3 of them are owned by corporations. I'm going to make a wild guess that these corporations have a more hands-off approach compared to these. Publishers buying game studios is definitely one of the main reasons that's led to the fall of the American AAA game industry. Greedy monetization tactics, stupid and unnecessary work cultures, and the general corporate vibe pisses off not only the people who buy the games, but also a very large number of game developers who just quit and get replaced, if they don't get laid off first. I also want to point out that the cost of game development going up is definitely a skill issue. Especially that corpos are too focused on showing off the technical and graphical side of their games instead of pure focus on story and gameplay. If we look at the list again, all the hits are budgeted under $100 million, with Baldur's Gate being the most expensive one. Meanwhile, all the flops are above 100 million, with most of them around 200 million. So yeah, skill issue. And that was my rant on the AAA game industry. Check out my game currently on sale, and if you have already played it, please consider writing a review. Thank you!